Hello, okay, this is the first of two videos looking at why did people go on the First Crusade. Obviously in 1095 Pope Urban caused the Crusade and roughly 100,000 people decided to go. Now lots of the information I'm using for this is from the Thomas Asbridge book, The First Crusade. There's also his red one in the library. Both are very good on this. Obviously you've got your notes and your files, etc, etc. Now, this question can fit into the 10 markers, where you have those two options. You can imagine it being which of the following was the most important reason as to why people went on the Crusade. Was it A or was it B? And you've got to give the pros and cons of both. It could also, of course, fit into those 20 markers, a standard essay. To what extent was religion the main reason why people went on Crusade? So, in the first video, I'm going to look at the leadership of the Crusade and those who led it, and that in itself could give you some ideas as to why some people went. And the second one will look at that more generic kind of the different factors and kind of what evidence there is for and against, some of which will be in this first video. The first thing to note is as to find out why people went is because we only really know why the top elite went. Medieval chroniclers and writers weren't interested in like the peasants and the kind of the middling sorts, or even the knights. They were only interested really in kind of the top brass who went on the Crusade. And of course they gave an official account as well, so again it's very difficult to find out the real motives, and there's probably a mixture for most people as to why they went. Anyway, let's crack on and find out about the leaders of this Crusade. So the first person who signed up for the Crusade was the papal legate for the Crusade, Bishop Adhemar of Lepoix, Adhemar, then Lepoix is Lepuy. He appears to have signed up pretty much on the day which the Pope announces it. It was obviously pre-planned. He was a keen supporter of Pope Urban, a keen ally of the Reform movement, clearly someone who the Pope trusted to be his representative on the Crusade. We then have Raymond of St Giles, Count of Toulouse. He was in his mid-60s by the time we get to the 1090s. He'd had an interesting past life. He'd been excommunicated twice by Pope Gregory VII back in, the 1070s, something like that. He'd obviously come back under the fold. He became a keen supporter of Pope Urban, a keen supporter of the papal reform movement. He had been to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage. He had lost an eye. His account suggests it was on this pilgrimage, something about payments to Muslims or something. He clearly believed that he was going to be some kind of big cheese on this crusade. We then get these southern Normans from Italy, these southern Italian Normans. Yes, they are relatives in some form of the Normans of Normandy who had invaded England. They have been acquiring land in southern Italy. They'd also been looking eastwards towards Byzantium for rich pickings there as well. In the 1080s, Bohemond of Taranto and his father had attacked the Balkans. You can understand as a consequence why Emperor Alexius was not that keen when Bohemond of Taranto rocks up in 1096, 1097. He brought with him his nephew, Tancred of Hauteville, Hauteville, and a whole contingent of these southern Normans. They've been close allies of Pope Urban, allies of the papal reform movement, but they did also have this interest in acquiring land and wealth. You also saw the younger brother of the King of France went on the crusade, Hugh of Vermandois, Vermandois, brother of King Philip of France. He hadn't had much land given to him. Apparently he wasn't very wealthy, and because the King of France had children, then the chances that he would never succeed were quite high. He fits into the younger sons theory, does he not? You also get from northern France and the Low Countries areas which, in a much later period, were the scenes of the First World War, Verdun and around there. You saw Godfrey of Bouillon. Godfrey of Bouillon, Bouillon, he'd been an enemy of the papal reform movement. He'd been a supporter of Henry IV in the veteracy contest. According to the Asbridge book, he was a well-known despoiler of church lands. That means attacking church property, ruling that part of France, quite a turbulent area. He brought with him his brother, Baldwin of Boulogne. Both of them were the younger sons of the Count of Boulogne. So again, suggesting that the younger sons theory could fit in for these two characters. And then finally, you have Robert of Normandy. Again, his younger brother, interestingly, was the King of England, William Rufus, II of England. He was the elder brother. He ruled Normandy. He seemed to have had a hard time ruling Normandy, not a very successful ruler by all accounts. In fact, according to the Asbridge book, one contemporary observer said the Duke decided to go on the Crusade to avoid the pressures of ruling Normandy. He took with him as well many allies from this part of the world, family relations, which fits into that theory. Stephen of Blois, Blois, who was his brother-in-law, apparently one of the richest people in France, so money wasn't a factor for him. He went on the Crusade. His wife was the daughter of William the Conqueror. Robert of Flanders, who was a cousin of Robert of Normandy, he went on the Crusade. His father, previous to him, he was dead by this stage, he'd actually gone on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem in the past. He'd actually sent 500 knights to Emperor Alexius in the past as well. So obviously there were some ties there with Byzantium. Again, this fact he could send 500 knights, yes, he was quite wealthy, which suggests that money wasn't a major factor. So we got a mixture in these leaders of the Crusade of family connections for some of them, money or not money being a factor for some of them. We got the younger brother syndrome or not being a factor for some of them. So you can use these examples to fit into essays as to why people went. So the next video is going to look in particular at the generic reasons as to why people went, and we'll try and slot in some of these examples and others into that video.